So what's up, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm switching it up a little bit, and as you read the title, this will be a story time on how one of my tenants in my first property almost cost me thousands of dollars in property damage. But before we get into the video, I just want to say thank you so much for all the support, all the sharing, the subscribing, the liking, the commenting. All of it is appreciated, and we just hit 50 subs. So I thank you for everything, and continue to like, share, subscribe, and do all that because we need it. I hope that all the information and all the lessons that I've learned are communicated to you clearly. And if you do decide to embark on this journey of real estate investing, I hope that the things that I've been through, the things I might have made mistakes on, that you can learn from them. There's always something to learn, and hopefully everything that I've been saying has registered. And even if you're not looking to get into something like this, I pray that everything works out for you and you just understand what you're getting into. Understand what you're getting into before you take on that risk, whatever it may be. So without further ado, let's get right into the story. So first of all, I don't want to make it seem as if this story is to be dramatic, to scare anybody. This is just a cautionary tale, right? Something you can learn from and realize that when it comes to real estate, it's not risky because of the buildings you're getting into. It's not risky because of just the money that you're going to have to spend. It's really risky because of the people you're going to have to manage. So you have to keep that in mind, because you can get caught up in the business side of real estate, and there's like, that makes sense, but you have to remember that when you're dealing with tenants, whenever you're dealing with different types of people, like I said in recent videos, you never know who you may be dealing with. So you never know the personalities, the potential mental illnesses. You have to take all of these into account and realize that this is going to be your responsibility too. Not directly, but what may come from somebody that's dealing with a mental illness or somebody that's going through something, what that could mean for you and your money. So keep that in mind. So this was in my triplex that I was living in, and we had tenants in the other two units, so completely rented out. And in one of the units, we had a person who maybe we should name Mark. Now, Mark was great. Mark was great whenever he first moved in, no problems at all. Very quiet person, very laid back, very what seemed like a grounded person. And it was like that for a long time. It was like that for a very long time. There was times where it seemed like Mark wouldn't even come out of his house. I went days, weeks without seeing this guy. And, as long as he's not in there dead, then we're good. You're not starting a problem with me or the other tenants. So we're good. And, there were times where after a while I would see him. I'll check on him, make sure everything was cool, make sure he had no questions or concerns about the property. And so it was great just to start out. I mean, and that was great to see for somebody who had, my first property, and the people who I had in my units were simple. They were simple. They were unproblematic. So this was great to me to see. So to be honest, after, so much time, let's say a year had went by of Mark consistently showing this laid back type of personality, in which, like I said, was unproblematic, caused no problems with me or the other tenants. I don't want to say I expected this to always be the case, because, like I said, you have to be cognizant of the unexpected. Like, you have to always have your mind ready, your finances ready, for that matter, for anything unexpected that happens. So it's not that I was expecting him to be like this the whole time, because you never know with people. But I absolutely hope for the best. And sometimes that's not enough. Now, transitioning, there began a point in time where Mark began to have some questionable people, to say the least, at his residence. You know, to me, I'm like, I mean, if that's the type of people you want to hang with, as long as they're not, you know, in there engaging in anything illegal or unethical, we're good. Like, they may look weird. Shoot, he looked weird. But at the end of the day, as the owner of a property, as long as there is no problem, I'm good. So that's the mindset I had. But things began to escalate. These people began making a lot more commotion. There was a lot more noise in his unit at random times of the night. Just people hanging around. And it's different people. It wasn't people that we had seen around the neighborhood. It was people that seemed like they were coming from just random places. Just random people showing up at his unit, which is ultimately my property. So I kept an eye out. But they had never done anything too crazy for me to put my foot down and do anything authoritative at the moment. But I should have done that earlier. And the reason I say that is because I began getting complaints from the other tenants of loud noises, damage, maybe somebody in his unit, in Mark's unit, that is throwing things, breaking things, yelling, screaming, cussing. It began to become unpleasant for the other tenants. So yes, they're complaining, and I'm contemplating what exactly to do at this moment. Now, to be completely honest, in my mind, this is pretty selfish of me, but the rent we were getting for this tenant was above market rent. So we're actually getting extra money every month. So when it came to certain problems, you know, you look over them unless they're seeming to be just outrageously bad. But you can't do it. You have to nip certain things in the bud, because it can only get worse from what you're seeing at that moment. So you can't just always turn a blind eye to something that seems like it's getting bad, because it's only going to take that one blow up or that one catastrophic event for you to wish that you had done something 2 weeks, 3 weeks earlier. So as the tenants were coming to me with these constant complaints, me and my property manager both had conversations with Mark, telling him that it's becoming a little too disruptive for everyone involved. You know, you go from somebody who, or you think about somebody who was super quiet, will barely even come out of his house, to now somebody who is inviting people over for parties and becoming super disruptive. So you have to have these talks with your tenant just to see what's really going on and see if you really need to put your foot down at that moment. And every time I would have these conversations with him, me or my property manager, he would give us the right response every time. Yeah, I got you. I got you. Yeah, that's my fault. I'm not even really friends with those people. They just this and that. I'm a little too nice. I just let people take advantage of me. I said, okay, great. So are we gonna do anything about it, or is this just gonna continue? So that answer was, it's just gonna continue. And that's exactly what started to happen. So as time went on, like I said, it kept happening, but it was getting worse. More people, more random people were coming over. And with this, it becomes a safety issue, because you don't know what these people are into. You don't know what they're doing in that unit. And with that being said, we actually, me and my property manager, we came to a conclusion. You know what? Let's do an inspection. Let's just see what's going on in his unit. And Then with him, there became communication issues. We wanted to do that. He was reluctant to do it for whatever reason. And, you know, weeks passed before we were able to get into his unit and see exactly what was going on. Now, when we eventually, and I shouldn't say we, it was my property manager that went in and inspected. He didn't see anything. But to be honest, with the amount of people that were in this unit, which was a 1-1, I mean, we're talking about something that's 600, 700 square feet. I mean, a small unit, and they would have it packed 8, 9, 10 deep in that unit. I'm thinking something is crazy is going on in there. Like there's no way you're telling me that everybody in there is just, I don't know, studying the Bible or watching the game. There's no way. So there were certain gut feelings that, I'm not gonna lie, I did ignore throughout, because of, it may be because of money or the not taking something as serious as it needed to be taken, or procrastination. And this is unacceptable on my part, so I do have to take that blame. But yeah, so our property manager didn't find anything crazy in this unit, so we passed him on the inspection. But there was still something that was off. There was something that was off to me, and not only me, but the other tenant that was coming to me about the disruptions and whatever. Something we expected something to be there that he was keeping hidden pretty well. Now this is where it gets a little dicey for me, being that I'm living in a property. I am responsible for myself, of course, and 2 other units that have a total of 7 people between. I mean, upstairs you had 6, and then you had this one. Somebody that's over that, this is where it becomes a little questionable. There was one night where there was that blow up. There was that quote unquote catastrophic event in which I wish I would have done something earlier. So one night, it's around midnight, and I hear glass break. Now, I had already dealt with broken glass in the other unit once before from Mark, and we had talked to him about it. And I mean, at the end of the day, this is my house, so you breaking my stuff is insane. So we talked to him about it, and he promises to not do it again. Well, the thing about it is, that happened 1 week before, and it still happened. So you're dealing with somebody who's probably not getting it. He's maybe dealing with something, and come to find out he was. And it's a tough situation because you feel for people like that, but business-wise, it's just not a good fit. At the time, like I said, during this event, not so much. So he breaks some more glass. I hear, like I said, it's around midnight. I'm like, wow, this is, he's doing this again. Okay. Then a few minutes later, I hear it sounds like somebody got kicked out. Like somebody physically got thrown out of a house, and the door shuts after a loud interaction or a loud confrontation between the 2 people who were at odds, right? So first, I hear the glass break. I go check on it. I don't really see anything. Then I hear somebody get kicked out of that unit. So now it's beginning to escalate. It's beginning to escalate now. I'm honestly thinking, what should I do at this point? Because now, I mean, we're talking about midnight, 12:30 a.m. What can I do? Hopefully this doesn't boil over into something that's, I mean, honestly, hopefully it doesn't boil over into something that's deadly. But what do I do to get in the middle of this? If that's appropriate. And to be honest, this became more serious than I thought it would. So after the guy gets kicked out, this is a guy that I guess Mark had befriended recently. They get into it in the house. He kicks him out, cusses him out, and shuts his door. When I go to look outside to see what's going on, I see my tenant from upstairs go outside. He has his phone out, he's ready to record. I overhear him talking to the guy who just got kicked out of Mark's unit. Come to find out, when my tenant from upstairs was filming, he saw that the guy that just got kicked out had a gun. And he had it cocked, had it loaded. Now, we have kids in this property. You know, even if we didn't have kids in the property, having your gun out, cocking it, ready to do whatever. I don't know if it's just a threat or if you're really looking to use it. It's completely psychotic. So this has grown into something that if I don't do something now, this will be uncontrollable. Now understand, him showing me that video, because I ended up going outside as well. Whenever I saw my tenant go downstairs or come downstairs and then go outside and film that video, I didn't have this information. So this happened a little after. So around that time in which the dude had the gun, in which I had no knowledge of, there was just a constant dispute between he and Mark. Constant dispute. To the point where Mark had actually left his unit. I guess the guy who had the gun at first, he went elsewhere. Mark needed to, I guess, clear his mind. He leaves his unit and he actually left his door cracked, which is crazy, but that sounds like the type of people we're dealing with right now. So he leaves his door cracked. I go and look inside his unit because I thought that was necessary. Everything is destroyed. Like everything is destroyed. It's crazy. Like it was a sight to see. It was a sight to see, to be honest with you. It was insane. So I remember, 30 minutes passed. He comes back, hands bloody. I don't know what he just did, but his hands are bloody, and he's talking crazy. Goes back in. They continue the dispute. He and the other guy, and it got so heated between he and Mark. He ends up. I visually saw this time whenever I was outside. He had his gun cocked. He was waiting at Mark's unit somewhere around there, like in the street, and Mark was down the street. And the reason he was down the street was because when that door was cracked, somebody came in and took his phone. He thought he knew who took it, and he was going back and forth with them. So as he is beefing with them at that residence down the street, you also have this dude with a gun who's waiting for him to come back down, and who knows what's going to happen. And now, I can't lie. I think a question you would ask me is, well, why didn't you call the police? Well, it's a thing. I did. At around 3:30, which I know the story started around 12:30. 3 hours passed by. That's how long this was going on for, about 3 hours. I call the cops at 3:30. I tell them, I say, look, there's somebody at my property. They have a gun. They're trying to break in to somebody else's unit. I just want to let y'all know that, and I say it just like I'm saying it right now. Literally just like I'm saying it right now. Calm, so they can understand me and get somebody here, and we can get these people taken away to jail, or just get them away from actual sane people. The cops didn't show up. So there's that. I called the cops like I was supposed to. They didn't want to show up. So what do I do from there? I go to sleep. Now, I go to sleep, and as I go back inside, I waited for the cops for like an hour. It was like 3:30, and it was like 4:30, 4:45, and I decided to go inside because these dudes are not showing up. Great. So I go inside. I hear that somebody was pounding on Mark's unit. I said, Jesus Christ, are they still on this? Like, they're still at it. Like, it's like 5 o'clock in the morning. So at that point, I knew it was a game for them. Like, the whole gun pulling and breaking in, that probably was just a little game they were playing. But then I hear, help me, help me, help me. I've been stabbed in the neck. Like, dang. So think about it. I mean, you have a situation where you call the cops like you're supposed to. They don't show up, and you have somebody allegedly, supposedly, getting stabbed outside. Right. Now, after that moment, because I looked outside and I didn't see any indication that somebody had got stabbed in the neck. Like, you would think somebody would be freaking out, they would be holding their neck. I saw nothing like that, so I didn't really freak out. I went right back to sleep. So it turns out around 7 o'clock, the cops decided to show up for whatever reason. I don't know who else called them, who else notified them, but they show up at 7 o'clock. Thanks. And it does turn out that the guy who had the gun did end up getting arrested. And the day after, Mark did move out of his unit. So things worked out for the best, but that's just a lesson in how serious things can become whenever you don't give the proper attention that you're supposed to in the moment you're supposed to. And I know with my property manager, I know for a fact that he screens all my tenants thoroughly. And even if you do that, it doesn't guarantee that somebody's not going to snap for whatever reason. But make that be, or let that be the first thing you make sure of whenever you're looking at a tenant. Make sure that you screen them, because systems like that can protect you emotionally and legally. That night, I'm not going to say caused a lot of distress, but it could have. I know it sounds weird because guns were pulled and there was so much going on and so much could have went wrong, but I did remain calm, and that's why it's good to have these things in place so that you'll always be protected. I remain professional with that tenant, the other tenants, whoever, because I want to make sure that people know that this is a business. Now, I did get a little too close, I would say, when it comes to having certain conversations with the tenants and them, just as you can see, crossing boundaries that they were not supposed to cross because I had let too much slide. So remember that managing people is the real business. Of course, there's the money, there's the building, there's the appreciation, there's the depreciation, there's the whatever. Managing people is the real business, because in an instant, people can change. Like, you can see somebody can change, and now what was a placid, calm, non-chaotic environment becomes something that's loud, disruptive, and almost fatal. So be cognizant and remember that assets require attentiveness, not just optimism. You can be as positive as you want to be, but you have to remember throughout that you're paying attention to what's going on in your property and also around the property. And there were red flags that I ignored that I shouldn't have. I should have made clear boundaries from the jump when I saw that too many people, too much traffic was coming through my property, coming to that unit specifically. And, you know, you had these different people looking for Mark, but knocking on the door of my unit and knocking on the door of the other unit. So it creates this sense of unease that should not be there at all. And that is on me. Remember that the cost of inaction can be higher than the cost of enforcing boundaries strictly. You have to do what you have to do. I mean, at the end of the day, it's your money that's on the line, not theirs. Now, even with all the property damage that he caused, it was great that he had guardians that were willing to pay for his destruction. And that's why I say he was a tenant that almost cost me thousands of dollars, because the damage in which he done was absolutely thousands of dollars worth of damage. But I didn't have to pay for anything because his people, his family, had decided that they were going to look out for him and for me by paying for the damages done. They told me they had appreciated how I dealt with everything, and like I said, I could have been better, but it was great to see that I didn't have to come out of pocket to deal with that. So we did get lucky. There was upside to that whole situation. At the end of the day, he did end up moving out. The other dude ended up getting arrested. So since then, we haven't had to deal with any more issues, and I pray it remains that way. So real estate, like a lot of things that may seem easy, is not a passive ordeal. You have to remain on top of things to make sure that the business stays in order. So when things like this happen, as chaotic as it can be, it's not a reason to quit, but it is a reason to stay prepared and always be prepared, always be ready for the unexpected. You have to be responsible when taking on risk, and that's as simple as it can get. Be responsible when taking on risk. So all in all, that's a crazy story. There were a couple of parts that I left out just to make sure that the video wasn't too long, but you get the point. I left the big parts in there, and I left the lessons in there that we all should learn, not just for real estate, but when it comes to responsibility, accountability. That's something that we should always take in life in general. So I thank you for viewing the video. I thank you for all your support. I said we just hit 50 subscribers, but like a couple days later we hit 60 subscribers. So as long as we continue to build, that's the goal for me. I hope you enjoyed this. This is a little different, story time. But yes, continue to like, share, subscribe, all that. Thank you for everything. Win at all costs, and I'm out.